Welcome to all of you this Sunday morning. My name is Maggie Dabrush, and in addition to being part of the Worship and Arts Committee, I'm honored to be the worship assistant this morning. However you are joining us, whomever you love, wherever you are on the path of your spiritual journey, whatever your age, abilities, hopes, or sorrows, you are welcome here. If you are with us for the first time this morning, a special welcome, and we will have a link for a virtual coffee hour posted online after the service. Sure. We are honored to welcome the Reverend Joe Murphy back to our pulpit once again. Reverend Joe was both dedicated and ordained in this church, so it's very exciting for her to be here again with us this morning. She is the new executive director for UU Mass Action and has jumped right into mobilizing and organizing with the many UU Mass Action campaigns. Joe previously worked as a chaplain at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, in addition to being a case manager supporting people living with brain injuries. She is a volunteer organizer with the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network and loves runs that end in brunch. I love the brunch part. This morning we light our chalice in the sanctuary and invite those joining us online to light a chalice in your home with words by Melanie Davis. If there ever were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. Please join us in our spoken affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
For a time for all ages, this morning I have a story about why it's important and good to cry. Now, before I tell the story, I think it's good to viscerally live this experience. And while I don't expect everyone to cry, I think it would be good if we all chose some sort of sound, maybe it's just an ugh or a ugh, or whatever it is that feels cathartic, that feels good in your body, and to couple with a hand motion, maybe a wringing of hands, maybe just a stretch. So take a moment, find your sound, find your cry and your motion. And then on the count of 3, we're all going to do it together. 1, 2, 3. Ah! It's pretty good. I hope that felt good. The Strong Man Who Cried, adapted by Rabbi Mark Gelman. Jacob cried a lot. Jacob cried when he was happy. Jacob cried when he was sad. But mostly, Jacob cried when he saw beautiful things. The sight of a fresh new flower or a sunset would fill him with happiness, and he would just cry. He couldn't help it, but his father Isaac was not happy about having a son who cried a lot. Isaac would not take Jacob hunting because Jacob would cry at the thought of some furry little animal becoming his supper. So Isaac would take his other son Esau, who loved to hunt and never cried. "Why can't you be more like your brother Esau?" Isaac would scold Jacob. "He hunts and fights and never cries. He is a real man." And Jacob would answer, "I cry when I feel like crying. I just can't change that." Then Isaac would stomp off, kick the dirt, and mutter strange words. Meanwhile, Rachel, who was Jacob's cousin living in a place called Haran, was having trouble with her father. Rachel was a shepherd, and this drove her father Laban crazy. Day and night he would yell at her, "Get away from those sheep and goats. Why can't you be more like your sister Leah? She doesn't smell like sheep. She sits in the tent and cooks and sews. She is a real woman." And Rachel would answer, "I like being a shepherd. I just can't change that." Then her father would stomp off, kick the dirt, and mutter strange words. But there was one part of shepherding that Rachel did not like. The well for watering the flocks had to be corked up each day with a huge rock so that all the water could not gush out and dry up. The rock was so big that every morning all the shepherds in the area had to push together to move the rock off the well. And every night they had to gather together to push it back on. One day in the morning, on the way to rock pushing, Rachel saw a new man at the well. He was small, with warm brown eyes, and he was talking with the other shepherds at the well. Suddenly, this little man, all by himself, pushed the big rock off of the well. The shepherds were amazed. The man approached Rachel and said, "My name is Jacob, the son of Isaac and Rebekah. I am your cousin, and I have been on a long journey. I'm very happy to see you." Then Jacob kissed Rachel and started to cry because she was so very beautiful. When the other shepherds saw Jacob crying, they said, "He is strong, but real men do not cry," and they walked away. But Rachel did not leave Jacob. She sat by him on the rock, and they watched the flocks drink from the well. Rachel said, "I never saw a man as strong as you who cries." Jacob looked at Rachel and said, "I never saw a woman so beautiful as you who is a shepherd." They laughed and cried, and after a time they went home.
A joy shared can be a joy expanded. Sorrow shared can feel as if someone is lifting a burden. This morning, we share in the sorrow of Abby Merson, thinking of her cousin Susan and Susan's husband, John. John is continuing to fight long COVID and suffering a setback. They would appreciate good thoughts and prayers for him. Thank you. Leslie would like to share a joy that after a long, hard wait, her son Ben has opened his barber shop in Marlborough, Clubhouse Barber Lounge. Marianne Orlando and Daryl Hess share a wonderful joy today. They are doing surgeries again at Beth Israel, and Daryl and Marianne are scheduled for Marianne's kidney transplant on March 29th. Beyond that, Daryl is her donor, and prayers are solicited and greatly appreciated. This wonderful countdown begins. We share sorrow with Valerie Packard as on the 2-year anniversary of her mother's passing. She is missed. Chris and Eileen share a joy. The news that their son Nathan is marrying Anna Lopez from Colombia this Friday. They are thrilled to welcome Anna into the family, and it's wonderful for them to be a part of this excitement and love. Congratulations. The DRE wishes several young members happy birthdays this week. And the youth group is holding Sky Burke in their thoughts after her accident and airlift to Children's Hospital. She is resting well at home, and everyone, myself included, would like to remind all drivers to slow down, and that if a school bus is stopped with flashing lights, you stop too. And we, of course, take one more moment to pause in contemplation for those joys and sorrows not shared out loud this morning. The words of the poet Albert Rios, the first poet laureate of Arizona, have been resonating with me lately. And just to let you know, we do have a poet laureate in Massachusetts, and her name is Portia Aliavola. But this is not her poem. This particular poem, When Giving is All We Have by Mr. Rios, felt appropriate to share this morning. We give because somebody gave to us. We give because giving could have changed us. We give because somebody gave to us. We give because nobody gave to us. We have been better for it. We have been wounded by it. Giving has many faces. It is loud and quiet, big though small, diamonds in wood nails. The story is old, the plot worn in the pages too, but we read this book anyway, over and over again. Giving is first and every time, hand to hand. Mine to yours, yours to mine. You give me blue, I give you yellow. Together, we are simple green. You gave me what you did not have, I gave you what I had to give. Together, we made something greater than the difference. In this spirit of trust, giving, and generosity, we gratefully accept the offering. The collection plates are positioned at the end of the aisle here in the sanctuary. Those worshiping at home can visit uuframingham.org and click on the Give Now link. Thank you all for your contributions.
I invite you into a quick moment of prayer and meditation, focusing on your body. I invite you to relax your shoulders, perhaps do some neck rolls, scanning, checking in with your body from the tips of your toes to the tip of your head. Starting at your toes, noticing if there's any tension, letting it go, and offering gratitude. Taking a deep breath and going up to your legs, your knees, letting go of tension, offering gratitude. Moving to your hips, your back, your neck, your face, maybe letting your jaw drop, letting go of tension and offering gratitude. Finally, feeling your whole body relax, letting go of all that tension, offering gratitude, blessing, prayer, and deep breaths. The reading today is a poem, Good Bones by Maggie Smith. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I have shortened it in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there's a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there's one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real disaster of a house chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. In remote forests in Madagascar, there is an orchid that is somewhat star-shaped, a delicate branching of white petals called the star of the forest. She may look delicate, and one may think her name comes from her shape, but she is also the star of the forest because she grows in complete darkness. This isn't just a survival technique for her. She thrives in darkness. The orchid gets nutrients from underground fungus, does not have chlorophyll for photosynthesis, but cuts through the forest dirt every so often to attract pollinators such as ants. I loved reading about this orchid for many reasons. The first being that we are in winter and the days are shorter, and though I may hate when the sun goes down, I love knowing there's thriving in darkness. This orchid is also a reminder for me about the ability for life to survive and thrive in unexpected places. In dark forest floors that, though may be threatened by our destruction of the earth, at least for now, host orchids. Many, many beautiful, delicate orchids, perhaps a piece of joy, thriving orchids that live happily and healthily in the dark. This winter, I have been in need of the possibility that exists within thriving orchids. I have found myself as a leader of an incredible organization, UMass Action, working alongside organizers on legislation, advocacy, and change in the areas of climate and environmental justice, indigenous justice, decarceration, immigrant, and economic justice. In these movement spaces, doing this work, I find myself standing in that awkward space of not being completely very hopeful, but having hope for the possibility of hope. I know that people have the capacity to do better, even when I've seen again and again that we do not always act on that capacity. When thinking about what blocks my ability to move from having hope in hope to just hope, I think about my ability to grieve. I believe that if we take time and space to grieve and be in grieving, we have a greater capacity for joy, for delight. And we need this joy. We need delight to continue on in these movement spaces, to continue to remember why we fight. The other night, I was watching Queer Eye, the popular makeover show on Netflix that includes 4 men and a non-binary person who go around redesigning houses, routines, and wardrobes. The first episode of the newest season is interrupted by COVID, filmed partly pre-pandemic, and then the audience is alerted that the show has shut down. We are then alerted that Queer Eye checks in on the family a year later and films the rest of the episode after the family has gone through the height of the pandemic. When we meet back up with the Fab Five, the audience is informed the Broken Spoke family had a difficult year. There is nothing particularly surprising about this statement. It is in fact very rare to find anyone who has not had a difficult year, a difficult set of years. For whatever reason, reading this at that moment made me burst into tears. I then proceeded to cry on and off for the next 3 episodes of a reality TV show that, though is touching, is not particularly devastating or tear-jerking. I just needed to cry. I was reminded of the Adrienne Maree Brown quote, "Remember, you are water. Of course you leave salt trails. Of course you are crying. Of course you are crying." I have a friend who also watched the same episode, sending me 2 texts, the first saying, "I cried during that episode," and the second, "Well, actually, I cried during them all." Again, I don't think this phenomenon has much to do with the reality makeover show that I do, of course, love. I think these tears are speaking to living in a time, in a world that often does not honor or have space for grieving. We have lost spaces to grieve. We see our coworkers on screens for meeting. There are less opportunities for people to just be present in person to one another, to be present to one another's grief. As a leader of UMass Action, as an organizer, part of accepting grief is necessary to staying in the work, to staying connected to the world. Not only do we grieve, but we are grieving in the midst of so many losses and circumstances that persist, that continue. We are tired of making so many decisions that are not flippant decisions, but that relate to our survival. We are tired of making decisions about where and when we can hug our loved ones. We are tired of living through uprisings and seeing racism viciously persist. We are tired of deportations continuing and immigration detentions filling when we are told by our leaders, by our president, that this would stop. We are tired of fighting for an earth that some seem to care about and others don't. We are tired. Of course we are crying. I cry all the time these days. I cry when I'm in a meeting for ending solitary confinement, listening to stories of survivors. I then cry at poems. I cry when I hear fellow ministers who are so anxious about our climate, our earth, and also oh so hopeful. I cry at songs. I cry when I talk about the numerous losses that we have all collectively incurred, the ones I personally have felt, the ones still to come. I let myself cry, and most often I feel somewhat better, or at least more attuned with reality. I feel a release, and I also feel more ready. In a recent conversation with an organizer, we talked about the fear we encounter when trying to organize, the fear of everything going up or already being in flames, the fear that it is already too late. We talk about how to move from this fear, leaving this place of fear so we can actually move. We talked about what it meant to move from this fear, recognizing that part of this move is seeing the new beginnings, the hope and possibility that when systems, when what we see as normal changes, when it breaks down, when it ends, there is possibility, there is hope for new systems, new potential, new hope. Whether or not we're able to build new and better systems remains an unknown. But that possibility, the possibility that as our world shifts, there could be better systems and ways of being is something I think needs to be felt more. But first, we have to grieve. We have to grieve and accept our tears as Jacob tears, tears that are part of us, an expression of our love for life, our love for beauty. In an article about eco-anxiety entitled, "How Can I Stay Hopeful as the World Burns?" Aisha Mirza interviews Robin Wall Kimmerer, author of the beautiful book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Mirza asks Kimmerer how she stays hopeful, and she says, "The grief is heartbreaking, but what I try to do is to feel that deeply, We can't look away from it because to me, grief is the measure of how much we love this world. Grief can paralyze us, it can bring us to despair and hopelessness. But when we recognize that the pain we are feeling is ecological compassion, it's love, it's a love for the world that is strong and fierce. Let us say, not on my watch. Kimura goes on to say, I always ask myself and others, what do you love too much to lose? Commit to that and know that it's our responsibility to pick that up and carry it through the narrows of climate change. That's what the world will look like on the other side. It is no joke to feel grief deeply, especially when there is so much to grieve. But I think it helps when we know that in part to grieve is to love. As Bell Hook reminds us, to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even sorrow that is unending. Even if sorrow is unending, I think we can take comfort that so is our love. To be touched by sorrow is to know you love, and to love is to grieve. The full quote from Adrienne Marie Brown that I quoted earlier goes, remember you are water. Of course you leave salt trails. Of course you are crying. If there happens to be a multitude of griefs upon you, individual and collective, or fast and slow, or small or large, add equal parts of these considerations, that the broken heart can cover more territory, that perhaps love can only be as large as grief demands, that grief is the growing up of the heart that bursts boundaries like old skin or a finished life, that grief is gratitude, that water seeks scale, that even your tears seek the recognition of community, that the heart is a front line and the fight is to feel in a world of distraction, that death might be the only freedom, that your grief is a worthwhile use of your time, that your body will feel only as much as it is able to, that the ones you grieve may be grieving you, that the sacred comes from the limitations, that you are excellent at loving. Our broken hearts certainly have a lot of territory to cover, but I have hope and knowledge that our frontline hearts can cover it. I think it's going to take work, but not more than we can handle. To want to survive in itself is a beautiful thing. To want to survive in a broken world on flames is even more beautiful, and perhaps is, at its core, hope. I have found spaces to grieve, and as the new director of UUMass Action, I continue to grieve, and I continue to move, moving from meeting to meeting, from legislative action to legislative action, crafting and creating moments of joy and delight where there are none, and treasuring them when they just come along. Let us nurture our longing to survive. Let us remember why we fight, and let us remember this by creating and finding joy. Let us find and enjoy the orchids that grow in complete darkness. Let us let ourselves cry and grieve. Let us remember that our pain is love and that we have always had more than enough of that. Of course you are crying. Of course we are crying. Let us let the tears flow as reminders of how deeply we are in love with the world. Blessed be.
There is more love.
For the benediction, I would like to do a blessing of the hands. I invite you, as you are willing or able or so moved, if you're in the sanctuary, to hold your hands up, and if on the computer, to hold them up to the screen. Bless all of these hands, apart in physical space, but together in worship, together in spirit. Bless these hands that know grief. Bless these hands that feel and track heartbeats. Blessings on these hands that are called to the labors of love. Bless these hands that bring comfort, care, that gives forth hope, that brings us together. Bless the hands that organize, pray, cook, knit, sew, that help with programming, that paint. Bless the hands that dance. Bless the hands that together do the work that needs to be done. May these hands receive as well as give. May they continue to unite with other hands, and may we all be held in the blessing that is hands coming together in love, in grief, in gratitude. Amen.
mean, it might have been like, he was limited in sight.
Yeah.
You know, and I have that to some degree.
Yeah, so she was ambulanced to children's for precaution, right? When they do.
Oh,
Isn't it beautiful? Mary Ann and Gerald, Orlando. At it again. Yeah, really cool. The two of them should be about.
oh my God. Yeah, so see, I got to talk to my medical statements with the judge. Even these days, so I'm although apparently plowing your car is a protest. But, you know, like, that's different. See, so, I don't know. No, I don't. As a teacher, I am hesitant to watch something like that because I live it every day.
You will find it people, but very accurate and very fun.
Okay.
It's more than a half hour at a time. It's like, or it was like just non-stop half hour. Fighting.
Okay. Watching her show. Yeah, go hear it. Yay. So now eat. Sorry.
Yes, it is.
And
So I need to be ready for it.
no, she's always been by. But I'm like, yeah, I'm kidding. I could have told you from your MCU crushes that you were by. It's like she spooned equally over Scarlett Johansson and Robert Downey Jr. So I was like, when she said, I think you're by, I think you are. Yeah.
Well swatted.
Yes. Good on you.
But then was like, it was very touching.
We were visiting like it was one of those like challenging family visits, but sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. They're not so happy. And so we're lying in bed. Please come here, my little my personal blast furnace.
Yes.
And because all of these like yes. When a friend goes from Lily to Lemon, stop. Sorry. Sorry. No, we're there. You can be Zay's them.
You can be so many things, but it is for non-animated objects, right?
Yes.
Any kind of human is fine by me, but human.
Yeah, like Z pronoun. Introduce them to Z pronouns. If they want, if they're thinking, introduce them to Z pronouns.
I think that's a common community at this age is gender insofar as our expectations are so ludicrous of humans.
Yes.
Culturally, the children are just seeking something, anything.
But I'm like, can we explore our identity before we explore our sexual identity? Like sexual identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we just explore our identity before we explore our gender identity?
Yes, yes, we can.
Sorry, because I'm like, hey, it's a strong name. It's like, I really feel great. I'm like, no, because that is your favorite character in a TV show. I'm like, no. I didn't say that. That's what my brain is saying.
My sister's child is born Fiona and is non-binary by Finn.
Which is fine.
Well, which is fine, except that, what they're discovering right now is that so Finn is a junior in high
But
school
that's an easy switch.
and is going to prom wearing a suit.
We've got each is always eating. Again. That's the whole, like, let's explore who we are. Let's explore who we are. Each of, like, when when my child was 2, we go out and they yell in the middle of the set. No, guys. Well, first of all, they're clumsy and they're right. And the sequence,
They're ridiculous.
And the sequence were itchy.
And why would you sleep on sequence?
Right. And so we did toy pajamas forever and ever, which is fine. You know, I was like, I did that. And then like, well, it's so much better than the shorty short. Okay, good. We gotta work with what you have. You're really tall. Well, I think that this is really fun. The things are getting stubby. Stubby. Stubby is more. A dozen would be more normal, but they're offset. Were you?